The following is intended for informational purposes only. It is intended to supplement classroom training and documentation. It should not be relied on as a replacement or substitute for classroom training with a live expert instructor. Welcome to Lesson 12, Developing a Custom Form Rule. Here we will show an example of writing our own plug-in form rule script. We will use scripting to create a non-base form rule and show how you configure it to in the system and add it into our form type. In this example, we will create a list of children into a form so that in building on what we've had previously, if a married couple has children and we want to add them to the particular our form, so that perhaps in the future we would even have the ability to give them a certain deduction based upon the number of children. So we would want to record the number of children on the form. So this is the ability of finding existing children in the system, adding them and associating in some way with the parents. And we'll show you how we do that and how you create your own form rule and configure it so that it can be used. So now we're going to add another form, and you will see that I've added some new functionality. In the personal details section, there's now ability to add children to the form, and you can add multiple children. And we will see how we did that in the form type. You can add children, and what we do is that in the validate step, we expect to find existing children, existing persons in the system. And then finally, when the form is actually posted, these children are added to the main taxpayer, to the primary taxpayer. And this doesn't necessarily have any financial implication, ramifications. However, you have a situation where you can add and associate these related persons to a primary taxpayer. So let us see how that works. So we're going to first of all add our receive date, and I'm going to add the primary taxpayer. I'm going to add in, let's call him Jonathan Smith. Let's call it White. I don't think we have a White. And add in social security numbers. And we'll add in Sandra White. So here we're going to add in some, let's say, 2 children, and it's going to try to find the children based upon the ID type and the number. And I've already set up an example of that by simple example. And here we're going to add in also the date of birth, and the date of birth of the children will be added as the start date when we actually create the person entity of the primary taxpayer. This will be the start date of the related person relationship. And we're going to add in a birth date, let's say beginning of 2000. And we're going to add another child, so we can see we have multiple records here. And let's say they're twins. Okay, and what will happen is that when we validate, the person ID will be filled in here if it can retrieve these persons. Okay, so that's the personal details. The address information we're going to add in again a fictitious address again. And we're going to add in some tax details, a joint amount. That's a lot of money. Let's make it more reasonable. and we're going to save. So let's see what happens here. So we've saved the details. We have 2 children, social security numbers, born 2000. We have some parents, and we have some address, and we have some tax information, some financial information. And let's validate this form. So as you see, is validated okay. Let's have a look at the form now. You'll see that actually we have 2 names associated, 2 children. By the way, you can see, by the way, that the name David and Adina Smith, they are children of Jonathan and Sandra White. Well, maybe we should just change that so it's even a better example. Let's just change these names of the parents to Smith, so that at least the children have the same name. Just make it slightly more credible. Okay. So again, we're creating a tax form for the parents, and we're just associating the children. Maybe they're going to have a child allowance. Again, I haven't added functionality for a child allowance, but you could imagine that we could add that functionality later on. The main thing you'll see is the functionality that we added now of adding the children is the main thing of this whole exercise is that I have a form rule which adds these children to the primary taxpayer. It will be added actually to the John Smith person, which you would hope that it could be associated with both parents, but the way I've done it is only associated with Jonathan Smith, and it's actually an example of my own form rule. I actually created this form rule myself. It isn't a base form rule, and the example here is showing you how you can actually create your own form rule and add it into the system. And this was done with a plugin script, and you'll see how I've done it. But let's first of all again validate and then post it, and then we will finally see how it works by looking at the form rule. So it's ready for posting again. Again, the posting details now have parents Jonathan and Sandra with children David and Adina. And if I actually now post, we would hope that everything is created as expected. Let's have a look to see what we have. We have Jonathan and Sandra being the parents, and we have a joint account. And if we click on the person here, we will see that we have Dr. Jonathan Smith with 2 children, David and Adina, and they are persons who existed in the system previously. We've just associated them in what is known as the related persons list, and this already existed, I said, and the second one as well is a separate person entity. And these children don't have any financial relationship to any accounts. The only ones who have accounts related to accounts are the parents. And if I go to the relationships over here, we will see that the Jonathan is associated as the main taxpayer. We can look at the account, and we see that we have Sandra and Jonathan. And if we go to the persons, as we said, we have 2, Sandra and Sandra and Jonathan. And if I actually go to Sandra to the person, you will see that this particular form rule and this particular functionality I added to the parents didn't add the related persons, the children to the mother, which you could imagine should be added. And it's something which we could obviously add more functionality to our form, but this is I just wanted to show you this idea of adding a child person to a person entity using a scripted form rule. And now, after showing you how this form worked and how I added this and the functionality, now let us look at the form type and how I created this particular functionality. So, let's have a look at the rules. And you will see that we have in the validate step, we have added a check children existence, and that's where we retrieved the children onto the form. And if I actually open that, you will see that this is a form rule which has the same structure, looks the same, user interface is the same as all the other ones, doesn't have a section in the middle, rule details. This is a very simple one. And it has a business object that we can have a look at. And let's have a look at the business object that I myself created. This is a CM business object because I just created it. And it has basically you don't have to add in any option types or any information. All the user interface is being created by using the parent BO, which is the form rule here. And this is the one that has the information needed. However, if you go back to this one over here, you can see that the schema that I'm using is a standard schema using the schema designer, and it has, you can actually display the map and see how it using UI hints and so on. But the actual important part is the algorithm itself. I'm using a standard validation algorithm, which validates the exception details, which we have on the form. But the main thing here is this one, which is the apply rule, and it's this script that I created, and I'm going to show you the script now. This script is here, and this is the work. This is actually what is actually happening, and this is the script. And I've actually moved the script into Notepad+, which is an editor that I use, and it can actually highlight the different sections of the code in a much more readable fashion. And this script does the following. First of all, what we do is get the form data, and we get the form data from the input-output section. And then what we do is, in fact, it's actually shorter than that. This is the whole. I just for some reason have it twice, but here it is. Basically, what I am doing is I'm going through with a for loop. I'm going through the related person list, which is on the form. Okay, so it's actually looping through. If we go back to our tax form, this is again happening at the validate step. This is the check when we retrieved the 2 children. In other words, when we retrieve the children here, we are trying to add the children to this form. So the script, what was it doing? It was looping through the information that I have on this. In other words, the ID type and the ID number, and retrieving that 2 pieces of information, the ID type and ID value, and invoking a business service. There's a business service called person search by ID type, which is equivalent of doing a search on, if I actually go directly to my, if I go directly to registration and go person over here, it's equivalent to actually the service which I'm using is this particular service over here, where I can put in social security number and putting This is exactly what I'm doing over here in script. I'm actually passing in the ID type and number using this service, and it results in getting back an ID, which is again the ID which you see over here. The ID coming back here, this person is being retrieved, and what I do with it is I put the value into a field called related person ID, and then what I do finally, after I've moved that in, I'm basically updating the form. I move the data back to the area called form business object, to the data area, and that is then saved. So as a result of me retrieving and setting the ID, what I have done is I've set this person ID, which is just an output. In other words, I can't actually add this in directly myself. The script is added in the IDs. And that was what this particular form rule does at this stage. Okay? In other words, at the stage of validation, I've added in this script to find the existence, check the existence of these related persons, these children, and I've added it to the form. Okay, so again, going back to the form type, I've added in check children existence, and it's linked to this scripted form rule, which is very simply added in by adding a script of your own, which you need to understand how scripts work, and this is not a lesson to teach you scripting. Okay, so some of this, if you've never seen this before, this might be new. You could actually look at the other course we have on config tools, which teaches you more in depth about how you can do many different types of scripts. So I'm not going to go through and describe how everything works over here, and the syntax. There's also online help as well within the product. But hopefully you understand the basics, that I'm invoking a business service and then adding the ID, and you can see that here. And that is what we are doing at this stage. Now, once we've done that, in the posting step, we have another form rule, add children to primary taxpayer. And this one has a different business object. Again, another CM1, which I created, also based upon a parent BO, using UI hints that you don't actually have to create any of the display maps or anything here in the option types. A word about this, that if you actually wanted to create a much more complicated type of form rule, which needs to know sections and lines of the form, then you would actually still have to use your own and create your own display maps, display and maintenance maps, which makes the actual configuration and setup more difficult. So the example I'm teaching you here is showing you here is one that really is a very simple interface. There is no actual need to do sections and lines. There's no rule details, as you saw within the form rule. Everything is in directly within the plugin script. So this example again has an algorithm, similar one that we have, an apply rule. It doesn't have any validation because it doesn't have any exception, it doesn't have any rule details, so we don't need that. And this is the one which actually adds the actual person to the two children to the base entity person that we created. And in this case, we added the primary, the person here that we added, Jonathan Smith, to his person entity, we added these two as child records. Okay, so it's the work that is done over here, this script, which does that work. And if I open that one up in Notepad, what we do here is get the maintenance object person and determine the business object underlying this particular person entity. And once we know the BO, the business object, what we do is we take the related person ID, which is on now the form. In other words, it's on the form now because we added it in the first stage. We have this information here shown. we have that so that we are able now to, and we're also adding the related birth date, which is coming from the form, date of birth. So we're taking these two pieces of information and we are adding it to a relationship ID. Since we're actually adding only children, that we added a relationship type directly called child, and that was added to the system. If we have a look at that, I added into the configuration a child, and that's why when I added it, we had the child, it automatically adds in the child information. So if you remember when I went to here, this relationship is child, and it's hard-coded in my script to add it as a child, because the whole purpose of this particular script is to add children and not other types of relationships. And I also set the financial relationship to be false, because I don't want any I don't need any financial relationship with the children. I just added it there. Again, an example, if we wanted to continue the work here and expanding this tax form, we may want to have a child benefit, a child allowance benefit, and as a deduction based upon the number of children, and we could add that in. But we haven't done that. I just wanted to show you the basic concept, again, of adding a scripted form rule, and basically showing how pretty simple it is. If you want to keep it simple, if you want to have it with sections and lines, then obviously that would be more complicated. Again, just to be clear about that, when I say adding with sections and lines, what I mean by that is, if we compare this with if we compare this with a form rule like the create this one, for example, we see that it has a rule details, and we are picking up sections and lines. Now, in order to do that, therefore, you need a much more sophisticated user interface, and it needs a display and a maintenance map. And I'm not showing you how to make display and UI maintenance maps for form rules right this moment. So if you wanted to make one like that, you would have to actually write your own display and maintenance maps. That doesn't. Once you've done that, you could then also write your code as a plugin script. You don't have to actually do that in Java. You can do that in plugin script. But as I said, the display maps and maintenance maps means that you have to actually write some JavaScript and write some HTML in order to format the user interface correctly. Okay, so that's the end of this exercise, and I hope you sort of appreciate now that you're able to expand upon base form rules and create your own ones, and you're able to create a more sophisticated type of tax form. So what have we seen in this lesson? We have seen how you can create your own custom form rule. A custom form rule can be written either in a script, in Config Tools scripting language, or it can be written in Java. In our case, today, in this lesson, we have shown how to do that using a script. Script is actually a complicated and detailed configuration, and in order to understand that, one really needs to know Config Tools well. There are many lessons, and even a different Config Tools YouTube lesson to show you how to use scripting and how to teach you the syntax. A script once it's been created, still has a lot of configuration that needs to be done in order to actually use it as a form rule. What we've seen is you create your script and once you've actually created that, you need to then wrap it in an algorithm type, which needs to be wrapped further in an algorithm. And once you've done that, you have to create your own form rule business object, a new form rule BO, and create a apply rule algorithm and plug this algorithm at in that space. So there's quite a lot of work that needs to be done. And once you've done that, you have the underlying business object, which then is the basis of adding a new form rule into your form rule group. And of course, once you have the form rule group, that needs to be plugged on into the form type. A custom form rule which does not reference sections and lines, a simpler form rule, for example, the one that we did today, or another one where even have rule details, but they don't have sections and lines defining, referencing the actual underlying form, do not need a custom UI map, and you can actually just use the parent form rule, and no UI maps, no HTML and JavaScript needs to be built in order to actually create your own form rule. You have to add in obviously your algorithm on your apply rule. You might want to add in, you might need and add in a validation algorithm, but you won't have to deal with UI maps. However, if you wanted to create a more sophisticated form rule which references sections and lines, you would actually have to create your own UI maps, and there are examples in the system in BASE to use to create your own sections and lines, but that isn't the example that we showed today. We showed the basic simple one.